bubble and the echo chamber is a widely acknowledged problem of our times, but for some reason everyone believes that just the other one has a problem, and the other one is just blinded by that. So in the next 50 minutes I'd like to illustrate why this problem is actually largely underestimated, and it's actually our #1 problem in the world. And I would like to propose a solution for that. And this solution can not only fix the problem, but it can lead us to a better future with a higher quality democracy. So let me quickly introduce myself. I'm not only a coffee lover, I'm also passionate in AI. I started my journey through AI 28 years ago. I was starting to study, and I was reading in the newspaper, artificial intelligence can predict stock markets. This was a day I fell in love, and I started to program neural networks, and I never stopped. And during this journey, I realized that AI can not only be used to predict, it can not only be used to automate processes, it can also be used to understand root causes, to understand what are the success factors to drive outcomes. That's what I built my research on, my PhD, and later on built a company. And we had the privilege to work for great brands like T-Mobile. Yeah, we extracted for them the insight that made them from a loss-making underdog to the profit engine of the company. And it's six-folded market evaluation. So there's real value in causal machine learning. We also help these guys to win more games and work for companies like Microsoft, Intel, and this gentleman to help him come away with regulation. But during this success, I'm still feeling I am boiling the water. I'm boiling the ocean, actually, because when I'm seeing how business leaders, politicians, and we all citizens, how we derive insights from data, it leaves me speechless. Because this is what I'm basically tinkering and thinking around since 28 years. And actually, what I want to do now is I want to convince you that the world is not flat. I want to convince you that facts are not the same as truth, which is a public synonym, right? Facts are truth. This is not the case, and I would like to convince you about this fact because this is the key. So I start with by showing you some examples. The US bombers in the World War II, they came back with lots of shoot holes. And the US Army did statistics. Yeah? They found that in the middle of the battle there were a lot of shoot holes, so they need more ammunition there. But actually, the effect of this work was zero. Why? Because, of course, to understand what's dangerous for the plane, you need to analyze those bombers who come back and who don't come back. Yeah? You need to understand, okay, what was the reason that the bomber didn't get back? So analyzing on a biased set of data, which is that, right? Just a part of an unbiased filter. Analyzing this leaves wrong conclusions. Second example. This was election in 36. Roosevelt against Landon. They did a huge survey. They interviewed 2 million Americans. And they found, over telephone, they found that 60% Landon will win. Actually, the opposite was true. Why is it? Because at that time, certain demographics would be able to buy a telephone. So again, filtered data leads to wrong conclusions. Last example. These are pictures we all see in media, right? And what do you conclude when you see a plane crash? What's your takeaway? Sure, it's dangerous to fly, right? That's what you take away when you see that. And actually media, 90% of what media show you is negative content. It is filtered content. And actually the likelihood to die from a plane crash is 1 to 11 million. The likelihood to die from a car crash is 1 to 103. It's 100,000 times more dangerous to drive a car. But still, 2% of the population develop clinical phobia against flying, and 40% are actually anxious about flying. So we all learn the wrong things, obviously the wrong things, by being exposed to filtered content. So this means facts are not truths. Of course, a singular fact is true, but it's a singular cut from the universe of truth. So, give you an example. You go over the Champs-Élysées, you may have it, okay, there's dog poop, right? And this is a fact. There's dog poop. But actually, this is probably the only one, right? So, but what media is doing, it shows you the dog poop. So what you end up in learning is the Champs-Élysées is full of dog poop. That's what you intuitively will learn from that. So if you are now scared, it gets worse. You may know the cocktail party syndrome. That's a phenomenon that we all, when we go to cocktail parties, there are 10 different conversations. If your name will be mentioned, you will hear it. And the same thing, if you buy a car, you will probably see your car or a similar car every day on the street. Why? Because our brain has an unconscious filter of what is relevant to you. So we basically perceive only what is relevant, basically, which is dangerous to us or what is interesting to us. This is what we unconsciously filter. And this is all the information, also what are captured by digital media, by social media. Yeah? By the way you interact with social platforms, with digital media, with news feeds, the platform learns how your unconscious you filters the world. So what then happens is the world may look colorful, beautiful, granular, but actually what you end up seeing is your favorite color, and you will believe the world is green. So what's the case is this comic actually visualizes best what the situation is. We all are scientists who just see part of the truth. Yeah? I may think it's a tree, it's a snake, it's a van, it's a road. And what it needs is that these scientists speak to each other. They get into a debate, they talk, and they try to convince. And only this would enable us to come closer to the truth, to understand that this is an elephant. So what's the consequence of that? First off, the consequence is growing polarization. Yeah? So people have more and more diverse opinions, and they cannot find compromise. And you see clear studies showing that the age of social did actually accelerate this process. And this polarization leads to stupefaction. It leads to the fact that we are exposed to filtered data and conclude more and more wrong things. And the scary thing now is also that the more intelligent you are, the more likely you are to get stupid, because you start searching for content that basically validates your own hypothesis, and you find more and more studies that, or whatever data which supports your hypothesis, so you start filtering even more. And that's what studies show, that intelligent people typically tend to become even more polarized. So intelligence alone is not a cure. You need to fix data you are exposed to. So the final consequence is actually man-made disasters. If we are not able to understand what is good for us, we cannot vote, we cannot elect those politicians or those movements that will be beneficial to solve the problem I want to be solved. Yeah. So we will not basically manage to reduce poverty, climate change, whatever you may think is the biggest problem, if we don't fix this problem. So, and here's my proposal. And it comes with this promise. So first off, we think that the actual algorithms need to stay. Because only if the content of the feed is customized to your interest, it will be interesting. And only this will remain basically the user base. If you would shut it down, if you would regulate that, the feed would be useless and nobody would use this platform anymore. So it's basically, you need to forget that. And also, we want to protect the free speech, yeah? So you should write everything you want. There should be the possibility that everyone sees that. But this needs to be complemented. And this is a critical part. We complement that with content that is optimized to challenge your own belief. And this comes with respectful and moderate content, because studies showed that only respectful language and moderate content has a capacity to convince people. Yeah? If you show the opposite content to opposite opinion, typically it increases the polarization even more. It needs to be the right content. So our idea is basically to use the technology which is already in place, but train it differently to calibrate what we see. So this is basically how it would look like. Here is a content which is selected out of millions of content to optimize engagement. Yeah. So as it is today, it is predicted that you will engage with this content. But before this content, there must be the so-called counter content shown. This counter content is optimized to disengage with this one. Yeah? It's simply the same deep learning algorithms in place, but trained differently. So it is trained that this one has minimizes the likelihood that this one is engaging after being exposed to this. So there's much more math behind that, and all this is explained in an article which published today, and it also discusses all those typical objections you may have in your head today. So, and this leads me to summarize that. I believe the suggestion we do, and the proposal we do, this mechanism is doable because it uses the algorithms which are already in place today. And this is also necessary because if we don't do that, polarization, stupefaction will go on, and we will be not able to solve our problems. And lastly, it actually has a capacity to make our world better, to arrive at a democracy which has higher quality. So the only ask I would have from you today is actually to read the article and to comment on that. If you don't like it, please comment, please engage. With this, thank you very much for listening.